podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The Two Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, but you get that message that says this content is not available in your location, a Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want on those services while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package which is instantly downloadable to your device and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. And then the EPL Roundtable, hosted by Kevin DeVries, on its own EPL Roundtable feed. So just search EPL Roundtable in your podcast device. And that's out after every match week. Now, on with the show. What's good, boys and girls? Two Footed Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is the 27th of March. Again, the weather is just betraying the fact that it's almost April, but that is what it is, and so be it. We are just days away from the return of real football, but last night we did have some important games that are just worth a mention. Not much more than that, but a bit of a mention. We had the final qualifiers, the playoffs for Euro 2024. In Path A, Wales, who had overcome Finland, played Poland, who'd overcome Estonia, and Poland win 5-4 on penalties. Dan James missing the crucial spot kick, and Poland qualify for Euro 2024. In Path B, we had Ukraine, who had beaten Bosnia and Herzegovina, against Iceland, who had beaten Israel, and it was Ukraine 2-1 on the night. Viktor Shankov and Mikhailo Mudryk scoring the goals to turn things round after Albert Gudmundsson, who had single-handedly destroyed Israel, put Iceland 1-up. So Ukraine are heading to the Euros. And in Path C, Georgia, who'd beaten Luxembourg 2-0, took on Greece, who'd beaten Kazakhstan 5-0. And in what I think is an upset, despite the fact the game was played in Tbilisi, Georgia win 4-2 on penalties to advance to the European Championship. So the groups are now set. Group A, Germany, Scotland, Hungary, and Switzerland. It's a pretty tough group. Germany are the standout name, but obviously the German national team at the moment just not particularly good, though some decent results of late. Group B, Spain, Croatia, Italy, and Albania. 10 years ago, this would have been an incredible group. Spain have some great players, but they're fairly average. Croatia have some good players, some formerly great players. They're not a great team anymore. And the Italians have loads of potential, but don't seem to want to fulfill it. Albania are the wild card here. You'd expect them probably to finish bottom, but you never know. Group C, Slovenia, Denmark, Serbia, and England. Pretty easy group for England. They should top that group. And if they do top that group, they should then have a fairly easy path to the semi-finals, because in the round of 16, they would play a third place finisher. And in the quarterfinals, they'd face the runner-up from groups A or B. Pretty simple path for England. Group D, Poland, Netherlands, Austria, and France. Obviously, France, probably the favourites for the competition. The Netherlands, you just never know with them. They're quite inconsistent. There's a lot of talent in some areas and not so much in others. Losing Botman for the Euros, I think, is a blow. Whether he would have started or not, I'm not sure. Group E, Belgium, Slovakia, Romania, and Ukraine. Now, if you're from one of those countries, obviously this group will interest you. I am not, and therefore have no real interest in this group. Interested to see a couple of players from Slovakia and Romania. We know most of the Ukrainian players, but there are one or two that I'm very much looking forward to seeing. Jorge Sudakov being the main one. Very, very curious to see how he does at a major international tournament. 12 caps already to his name at 21 years of age. There's talent in that squad. Without question, there's talent in that squad. If Lunin or Trubin is number one, then that's a strong goalkeeper. Zabarny's very good. Michaelenko's pretty good. Matvienko's pretty good. So defensively, they'll be strong. Right back, maybe a question mark. In midfield, you've got Zinchenko, you've got Malinovsky, you've got Shankov, you've got Sudakov, you've got Mudryk. Again, pretty good. Up front, Yaremchuk, Dovbyk, and Vanat were the strikers in the most recent squad. There isn't really anyone else to come back in that's going to change their attacking outlook. But Denis Popov is another decent defender that they can add to the mix. He's not a regular in the squad, though. Group F, final group then, I think is really interesting. Turkey, Georgia, Portugal, and the Czech Republic. Most people would expect Georgia to finish bottom, and that's a likely outcome. But like Albania, first time in a major tournament, maybe, just maybe, they can pull off a shock or two. The Czech Republic team, I mean, it's far from the vintage of old, but there's still some really good players in it. So they won't be an easy out, for sure. They'll be tough to beat. But I still think their best outcome is probably finishing third. I'm really interested in this Turkish squad. There's a lot of talent in it. I like the look of Yilmaz, the left back at Rangers. Zeki Çelik is good. Ozan Kabak, Mert Mulder, Mary Demirel, like pretty strong defensively. Really like Salioskan and Ergun Koku in midfield. And they've obviously got Çalhanoğlu as well, playing the best football of his career. You've got Arda Güler. You've got Omur, who's recently joined Hull, who's a super talented player, but has never quite been able to make the most of his talent. Can Uzun is one to keep an eye on, plays from Nuremberg. And the attack is where it gets interesting for me, because I'm really interested in Kenan Yildiz, the youngster at Juve. Really, really talented player. Like him and Arda Güler might be the best players Turkey have produced since at least 10 years. at least 10 years, since maybe even longer. Those two are super talented. You've got Enes Ünal. They don't have anyone that scores at a consistent enough clip other than Cengiz Under, and even he's not hugely prolific in front of goal. But there's a lot of talent in and around that squad, and I will be interested to see how they look. Portugal, for me, along with France and England, should be favourites. However, because they're so beholden to Cristiano, I'm just going to write them off. I don't think they can win it with him in the team. Simple as that. They've got fairly average goalkeepers, but they've got some really good young centre-backs. Obviously, Ruben Diaz is no longer young, but he's still a really good centre-back. You've got Antonio Silva. You've got Goncalo Inacio. They're really, really good. You've got Dalot playing really well as an option of fullback. You've got other good fullback options. You've got great options in midfield. You've got great options in attack. Cristiano just ruins the whole thing. He genuinely does. The best way to use him would be last 15 minutes off the bench. And if they did that, I'd actually give them a chance to win it. And I actually think he could be a positive impact player. But if he's starting, no. I still think they'll top that group, though. So, the top two teams qualify, obviously. And then 4 of the 6 third-place teams will qualify. And that will give us our round of 16. Then we will have quarterfinals, semifinals, and obviously the final will take place in Berlin. Some fantastic venues. This is what Germany does, I think, better than anybody. I think they've got the best stadiums. So we've got the Olympiastadion in Berlin, which is an architectural triumph. The atmosphere can be, because of the way one end is a little bit open, the atmosphere can escape a little bit, and I don't like having a running track. But it was built, obviously, for the Olympics. But it's a phenomenal stadium. You've got the Allianz Arena in Munich, which is one of the best stadiums anywhere in the world. You've got the Westfalenstadion, also known as the Signal Iduna Park, in Dortmund, which is obviously, for atmosphere, maybe the best stadium in Europe. You've got the MHP Arena in Stuttgart, which was for a long time known as the Mercedes-Benz Arena, but now the MHP Arena. Really nice stadium, really good atmosphere. Then in Gelsenkirchen, you have Schalke's stadium, the Veltins Arena, which at this point, it's 22, 23 years old. But when it was built, it was state-of-the-art, retractable roof, the whole shebang. A pitch that slides out underneath as well, so that the pitch can be given natural light, etc., and the roof can stay closed. They can do concerts and other events and move the pitch out. Really, really good. The Deutsche Bank Park in Frankfurt, home of Eintracht, really nice stadium, good atmosphere there. In Hamburg, then we've got the Volkspark Stadion, which again is a great stadium. Again, at this point, to be fair, though, it was renovated a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Because they renovated it in the late 90s and did an incredible job of it. But I think it was renovated a couple of years ago, again, ahead of this tournament. In Dusseldorf, we have what was previously known as the Esperet Arena, now known as the Merkur Spiel Arena. It is an interesting looking stadium on the outside, and it's got a great atmosphere on the inside. In Cologne, the Rhine Energy Stadium, another one with a really good atmosphere, quite an interesting design on the latest remodel of it, because they did build it, have it, demolish it, and rebuild it back for the 2006 World Cup. But yeah, it's a really nice arena. It's well worth your while. If you're going, it's well worth your while going to that arena. And then we have the Red Bull Arena in Leipzig, which is decent. It's decent. It's a bit cookie cutter. It's very much on the same model as the Emirates and places like that, built in and around that same time. And it's just from that template. It's a good, like, there's nothing to knock it. It's a good stadium. There's some cool old quirks to it, from the setting of the stadium. If you want to Google images of it, you can see the way it's set down into the ground, into the old stadium's footing. And yeah, I mean, it's a cool stadium. But the Germans do stadiums really well. Don't normally, like, we've had a raft of shit international tournaments over the last great Euros was probably 2000. 04 was mediocre. 08 was good but predictable. 12 was good but predictable. 16 was pretty crappy. The last one was just a bit of a mess. I didn't enjoy the last one because of how it was held. I thought there was just too much movement, really. The idea of the 11 host cities in all the different countries, it was too spread out and it didn't really work. But the final ended well. Obviously, this one is ahead of 2028 when it's held in England, Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, which, should be pretty fun, though it's far too English-centric, and it's a bit of a scandal that Ireland, Scotland, and Wales only get one stadium each, while England gets 6. That bugs the shit out of me. It really does. Bugs the absolute shit out of me. And, like, I'm not being funny, but St. James's Park and Villa Park, they need quite a lot of upgrading. Now, the owners do have plans to do those things, but still. Like Wembley, I'm fine with. The Tottenham Stadium, I'm absolutely fine with. The new Everton Stadium, no problem at all. Great. And they should have had one more, maybe. Maybe. But probably not. That should have been it. Those 3. Hampden Park has been used. I think they should have tried to get Murrayfield, so Edinburgh should have had a stadium. Now, people will say there's only one stadium in Ireland. We could have done Croke Park as well. We could have done Páirc Uí Chaoimh. I don't think it would have been too much of a stretch. Casement Park, obviously. And yeah, I mean, again, with Wales, people say it's only the Millennium Stadium that's big enough. Yeah, maybe, but if Casement Park can hold games, I mean, surely Cardiff Stadium could hold games, or Swansea, the Liberty could have held a game. Even if you want to just do one for Wales, but do 2 for Scotland and 2 for Ireland. We have enough stadiums that are big enough. We've got enough GAA stadiums here to absolutely do it without question. We've got enough stadiums here to do it. So I would have liked to have seen Ireland get another stadium. I would have liked Scotland definitely should have been. Scotland have 4 incredible stadiums. 3 of them happen to be in Glasgow, obviously. But there's no reason they couldn't have gotten Murrayfield. Like, really and truly, there's no reason they couldn't have got Murrayfield. But yeah, I'm hoping for a good competition in 2024. I'm hoping that we get some excitement. I think obviously the last World Cup was decent. The standard of football overall was a bit crap, but as it went on, there was a lot of drama. There was some great storylines, and the final was a lot of fun, especially with the end and with Argentina winning it, with Messi finally winning it. That was great. The last Copa America was also quite good. Back in 2021, of course, Argentina won that as well, beating Brazil in the final. There was a lot of good games in that competition and a lot of good football played. There were some duds, without question, but looking forward to this summer's Copa America as well, obviously been held in America as a kind of test run for the World Cup. I said Germany do stadiums better than everybody else. The Americans do stadiums better than everybody else. Like, let's be fair. Like, look at these stadiums. The AT&T in Dallas, or in Arlington, is incredible. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, is phenomenal. Nice to see them using the Q2 in Alston, one of the smaller stadiums, but that's really good. Same with Children's Mercy Park in Kansas and Inter and Co in Orlando. The Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, which has had 40 different names over the years. It's older. It's been done up. I wouldn't be using it, but so be it. You've got Arrowhead in Kansas as well. Well, it's in Kansas City, Missouri, and the soccer stadium is in Kansas City, Kansas. But yeah, Allegiant Stadium in Vegas looks amazing. State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona has held multiple Super Bowls, I'm fairly certain of. The Levi Stadium in San Francisco or in Santa Clara is fairly new and incredible. SoFi is just phenomenal. It's an absolute masterpiece. The Energy Stadium in Houston is also very impressive, as is the MetLife Stadium, though by all accounts the pitch is shit. And then the Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina, is also an interesting one. It's a bit older at this point. When was it built? Obviously, when the Panthers went in. Built in 96, but has been renovated multiple times. Now, what those renovations entail, I'm not 100% certain. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this competition as well as the Euros. This competition, I think I said, runs the 20th of June to the 14th of July. Group A, Argentina, Peru, Chile, and Canada. So that's fun. Group B, Mexico, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Jamaica. Group C, the USA, Uruguay, Panama, and Bolivia. Group D is Brazil, Colombia, Paraguay, and Costa Rica. 16 teams. That's exactly the right number. That's all you need. And I think they should do the Copa America in this format every time, where it's North, South, and Central America. Bring the whole lot in. Bring everybody in. Anybody in the Americas, have them involved. It'll make for a more competitive competition. I also think it will help for the development of the USA, Canada, and Mexico. I'm very much looking forward to this competition in particular. And I love that it's 16 teams. I do. I love that it's 16 teams. 16 is how many the Euros should have as well. I'm not being funny, but some of those countries, yeah, it's great for them to get to represent their nation, but they're not going to be competitive. I'm going to go to break. When I come back, we've got some nostalgia, and it is European Championships based. So see you after this. Right, welcome back. So, as you know, I am a nostalgia merchant, and recently I went back and rewatched UEFA 88, Euro 88. What a competition. Held in West Germany, which was why I went and watched it. And took place over 15 days, 8 teams, 8 venues, and 8 cities. Just super competitive, high level of play, high level of competition, amazing talent. The venues, the old Olympiastadion in Munich, with that unique roof, fantastic. The old Parkstadion in Gelsenkirchen. The old Volksparkstadion in Hamburg. The Wallstadion in Frankfurt. Those two are the same stadiums. They've just been rebuilt. The Rhein Stadium in Dusseldorf. The Niedersachsen Stadium in Hanover. The Neckarstadion in Stuttgart. And the Mungersdorfer Stadion in Cologne. Again, it's been, many of these are what the stadiums are, or were what the stadiums are now. Some have been knocked and rebuilt. Some were partially demolished and rebuilt. Some were just upgraded. I think only Bayern and Schalke have actually moved. I think all the rest are still playing at the same stadium, but it's basically a new stadium that's been rebuilt, or a stadium that's been massively upgraded. The squads. So we start with Denmark. Some of the names here: Morten Olsen, obviously gone on to be a very successful manager. You've got Preben Elchar, pretty prolific goal scorer. Michael Laudrup, my favourite player of all time. At this point, 23 years of age, really starting to come into his own. Lars Olsen, decent player, went on to become a good manager. John Jensen, obviously famously scored the goal in the final in 92 and then moved to Arsenal. Jesper Olsen, really exciting winger, back then was playing for Manchester United. Flemming Poulsen, another good, solid player. And Peter Schmeichel, who obviously at this point was 24 as the backup goalkeeper, would make his name in 92 and then join Manchester United, where people seem to forget how old he was when he joined United. Like, Peter Schmeichel was born in November of 1963 and he joined United in 1991. He was almost 28 when he joined United. He'd already had quite a long career. He'd been playing for 10 years and in the national team for 4 years before he joined United. And obviously at United, and then he had that first season where it went okay, but they didn't win the league, finished second to Leeds. Then he wins the Euros. He comes back an absolute monster. And from there, he's just off to the races. That Danish squad, really, really talented. Not quite the Danish Dynamite squad that went to the 86 World Cup, but pretty close. Italy, Walter Zenga, really good goalkeeper. 2 all-time great defenders in Franco Baresi and Beppe Bergami. You've got Ciro Ferrara, who would go on and have a really good career with Juve. You've got a young Paolo Maldini, so your third all-timer defender in that squad. You've got Carlo Ancelotti as one of the midfielders. The midfield group wasn't great. Giuseppe Giannini is probably the star of the show in terms of midfielders, but you do have Roberto Donadoni as well. But the forward players are interesting. You do have Altobelli, who was the captain, Inter legend, and just a tremendous player. Played for Inter from 77 until maybe 90, maybe a little bit earlier than 90, but a really, really good player. But you've got 2 young strikers in this team, in this squad rather, who were really making noise at Sampdoria in Roberto Mancini and Gianluca Vialli. They were 22 or 23 at the time, absolutely phenomenal footballers. And what they became together and then apart when they both moved on, very, very impressive. Spain, Andoni Zubizarreta, one of the great Spanish goalkeepers. Jose Antonio Camacho, who obviously would also have a great career as a manager. Julio Salinas, tremendous player in the 80s and 90s as a forward. Not a prolific goal scorer, but always dangerous. Manuel Sanchis, also known as Manolo. For me, the best Spanish defender of all time. You have Jose Maria Becerro, who played largely for Barcelona and Real Sociedad. Really, really good midfielder. Chiqui Begiristain had a good career, obviously now best known as the director of football at Man City and prior to that at Barcelona. And you've got Michel, another one of the Real group that had come through around Butragueño. You also, of course, do have, I don't know how I missed him, you do have Emilio Butragueño, El Butre, the Vulture. And the group that came through the academy with him and around the same time as him, Manolo Sanchis, Rafael Martin Vasquez, Michel, and Miguel Pardiza. These 5 emerged from the group, from the academy, in and around the same time. Butro was the leader of them, the goal-scoring star. I would say Manolo was the best player, but he was always happy to be out of the spotlight. His leadership was in terms of what he did on the pitch, not the reputation off the pitch. Butragueño is one of the best strikers I've ever seen, genuinely. An absolute menace in the opposition penalty area. Tremendous, tremendous player. Rounding out Group 1, you have West Germany, the hosts, the favourites. Ike Immel, really good goalkeeper, always a little bit underrated. Landed at City late in his career and got a bit more love. Guido Buchwald, an all-time great German centre-back. Andreas Brehme, one of the best left-backs of all time. A young Jurgen Kohler, one of the best centre-backs of all time. You've got Pierre Littbarski, phenomenal midfielder. Absolutely phenomenal. Lothar Matthäus, one of the best, if not the best midfielders to ever play the game. Rudi Völler, very, very good striker, obviously. Olaf Thon, super talented young midfielder. You've got young, up-and-coming Bodo Illgner, who would go on to be one of the best goalkeepers of all time. You've got a young Jurgen Klinsmann, who was at Stuttgart at the time and really starting to make noise. It's a really talented squad. And obviously, they'd win the World Cup just 2 years later. We also got Thomas Berthold, who I missed there, another great, great German defender. They would go on to win the World Cup 2 years later with the addition of a couple of players, including Thomas Hassler and others. But yeah, what a team under Franz Beckenbauer. In Group 2, you had England. Peter Shilton, still probably England's best ever goalkeeper. Or, well, Gordon Banks, to be fair. I think Ray Clemens was probably a better goalkeeper than Shilton. But for England, Peter Shilton probably... Banks won the World Cup. It's probably Banks, then Shilton. Gary Stevens, really, really good player whose career was cut short through a horrible injury. Kenny Sampson, one of the great fullbacks in English history. Neil Webb, very talented player, career got blighted by injuries. Dave Watson, probably the closest thing to him now is Lewis Dunk. Dave Watson was the Lewis Dunk of Everton in the 80s. Tony Adams, very young at this point, 21 years of age, but already establishing himself as an all-time great England defender. He was just sensational back then. Brian Robson, I think after Souness, he's the best midfielder, best central midfielder Britain has ever produced. I would say Gerrard was a better player than him, but I always preferred Gerrard as the 10 or on the right. Trevor Steven, another really good player. You'll note there, we've gone through 8 names and 3 of them are for Everton, which if it happened now, we'd be shocked. There's another Everton name to come. But Everton were great in the 80s. They just were. And at some point we'll do Everton in the 80s for a nostalgia pod. Peter Beardsley, I mean, what needs to be said? A footballing genius. Gary Lineker, a goal-scoring genius. John Barnes, a footballing genius. Chris Waddle, a footballing genius. Chris Wood, a really good goalkeeper who was denied what should have been his run as England number 1 because Shilton refused to retire after the 86 World Cup when Bobby Robson should have taken him to one side and said, look, sorry, but it's Chris Wood's time now. Viv Anderson, another truly great defender. He was one of the first, if not the first. Yeah, he was the first black player to play for England in 1978. Had a great career with Forest, won multiple European Cups, went to Arsenal, went to United, played for Sheffield Wednesday, then went to Barnsley, and then he was at Middlesbrough as more of a coach than a player. He was the assistant manager, but he was kind of player assistant manager. Steve McMahon, a bustly do-everything midfielder. Peter Reid, towards the end of his career, but he'd been tremendous for Everton. Never quite got the shine he deserved for England. What's interesting here is you've got 4 players playing outside of England, which was unusual at the time. Now, Chris Woods being at Rangers was not so unusual, especially then when they were spending so much money. They would also, they signed Gary Stevens from Everton after this competition, and then he went to Tranmere, and then Trevor Steven would leave Everton and he went to Marseille. No, he went to Rangers first and then Marseille and then back to Rangers. So Rangers were spending a lot of money bringing in English players. They'd also signed Terry Butcher, who was absent from this squad, I assume through injury. Glenn Hoddle was playing for Monaco in France. Mark Hateley was playing for Monaco as well. You've got Mark Wright, really good centre-back, very, very underrated. He was at Derby then. He would go to Liverpool a few years later. Him and Adams should have established themselves as a partnership for England, but for one reason or another, Butcher's presence being one, injuries being another, and Des Walker appearing, it just never really happened. And then Tony Dorigo playing for Chelsea at the time, would go on to be best known for his time at Leeds, I think, by most people. He'd been at Villa for years. Born in Australia, had moved to England at 16 to play for Villa, came through their academy, played for them for 3 years, then went Chelsea for 4 years, Leeds for 6 years, then moved to Torino, then back to Derby for 2 years and then a year with Stoke. Born in Australia to an Italian father and an Australian mother, but because he moved to England when he did, he gained citizenship and then decided he was going to stick with them. I think he'd been approached. Yes, he was initially called up by Australia for the 1986 World Cup qualifying campaign. However, Aston Villa manager Tony Barton refused him permission to travel. Imagine if that happened now. Barton felt playing for Australia would be a waste of time for Dorigo, as their opponents were generally weaker opposition. The Football Association approached Dorigo to represent England. England came along and asked me to play for them if I hung around for another year and got British citizenship. My father was Italian, my mother was Australian, so I've no English parentage at all. What I say to my English friends is that you lot were so bad you need an Aussie to come and play for you. Tony Dorigo was a really good player, but he should have played for Australia. Now, I'm fairly certain he was in this squad. He was in the squad because Stuart Pearce was injured. Because Pearce would have been the backup left back to Kenny Sampson. Sampson probably still at that point would have been first choice. He was a great player, Kenny Sampson. Very, very underrated. Came through at Palace, played there for a bunch of years, then went to Arsenal and had a great run in the 80s. And then he sort of became a bit of a journeyman, Newcastle, QPR, Coventry, Everton, Brentford, and Watford. Won 86 caps for England in total. So Pearce been injured, got Dorigo the call up. The Netherlands. You've got Hans van Breukelen, really good goalkeeper. You've got Ronald Koeman at that point, established as one of the best centre-backs in the world. Aaron Winter, really good midfielder, played recently for Ajax against Liverpool in the friendly game. John Bosman should have been more than he became. The great Ruud Gullit in his pomp, arguably at that point the second best player in the world. John van Schip, decent player. Marco van Basten, young at that point, only 23, but already establishing himself as probably the best number 9 in the world. Erwin Koeman, younger brother of Ronald, always overlooked, but a really good midfielder in his own right. Wim Kieft, decent player. Frank Rijkaard, sensational, was at Saragossa at that point, would join Milan afterwards. And then Jan Wouters as well, worth mentioning. Soviet Union. These were all home-based players. You've got Demyanenko, the kind of, I suppose, the leader of the defense, played left back, but was incredible for Dynamo Kiev for years. You've got Litovchenko, Gennady Litovchenko in midfield. A lot of these players would not be Russian now. He'd have been Ukrainian. Most of the defense was so 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 Russian-based players in the squad at the time. You've got 2 from Dynamo Minsk, who would be Belarusian now. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 from Dynamo Kiev. Now, the manager was Valery Lobanovsky, one of the all-time greats. He was Ukrainian. He'd managed Dynamo Kiev forever and was manager of Dynamo Kiev at this time while also managing the Soviet Union. So he was just picking his own players because they knew what he wanted of them. You've also got one player from Dnipro, the club that went bust a few years ago. But yeah, and you've got You've got one from Dino Tbilisi, who would be Georgian now. You've got one from Zalgiris, who would be Lithuanian now. You've got one from Zenit Leningrad, which is now Zenit St. Petersburg. You've got 1, 2, 3 from Spartak Moscow, and that's it. Isn't that crazy? The Russians were massively underrepresented in their own in the Soviet national team. Igor Belanov is probably the star turn of the squad. Him and Protasov were brilliant together for Dynamo Kiev. Most of the best players here are from Dynamo Kiev. And then the most important squad is the Republic of Ireland, our first ever international tournament. You've got Packie Bonner in goal. You've got Chris Morris, Chris Hughton, two very solid fullbacks. Mick McCarthy, Kevin Moran, very solid centre-backs. In midfield, you've got the likes of Ronnie Whelan. You've got Paul McGrath was playing as a defensive midfielder at that point. You've got Ray Houghton and Tony Galvin, John Aldridge and Frank Stapleton up front. Ireland were numbered as they were going to line up. Those are the lads that got us to the competition. Those are the lads that are going to play. That was the view that that Jack Charlton took. These lads got us there. These lads are going to start. So he numbered them 1 to 11. Tony Galvin went into that tournament off injury and in rotten form. He was still going to start. Cascarino, Liam O'Brien, David Kelly, Kevin Sheedy, who should have been starting over Galvin, Jerry Payton, John Byrne, John Sheridan, arguably could have been starting in midfield instead of McGrath, with McGrath moving to centre-back over Moran. Probably would have been the play there. John Anderson and a young Niall Quinn. Tremendous set of lads. In the groups, Group 1, West Germany won, Italy won. Andreas Brehme scored for West Germany. Roberto Mancini equalised. Oh no, Mancini scored first. Brehme equalised. Spain beat Denmark 3-2. Michel scored the first. Laudrup equalised. Butragueño put them back ahead. Gordillo put them 3-1 up. Poulsen pulled one back, but it was too little too late. West Germany then beat Denmark 2-0. Jurgen Klinsmann and Olaf Thon scoring. Gianluca Vialli scored the only goal as Italy beat Spain. West Germany then beat Spain 2-0 with Rudi Völler getting both goals, and Italy beat Denmark 2-0, Altobelli and De Agostini scoring the goals. So West Germany qualify top, Italy second, both with 5 points. Same outcomes, 2 wins, a draw. But West Germany scored 1 goal more, and both sides only conceded 1. Spain finish in third with 2 points, and the Danes go home pointless. In Group B, one of the great shocks in international competition, the Republic of Ireland won, England 0. Ray Houghton with the only goal of the game, a famous night in Stuttgart, a famous header, tremendous stuff. He scored probably the 2 biggest goals in Irish history, that one and the one against Italy at Giants Stadium 6 years later. The Soviet Union beaten the Netherlands 1-0 with Vasil Rats getting the opening goal, or the only goal rather. Then England lost 3-1 to the Netherlands, Marco van Basten with a hat-trick, and Robson scoring the only goal for England. That actually brought them back to 1-1, and then the Netherlands wiped the floor with them. Republic of Ireland won, the Soviet Union won. Ronnie Whelan scores the goal of the second best goal of the tournament. The Van Basten goal is the goal of the tournament. But if it hadn't been for maybe the best volley ever, the Ronnie Whelan goal would have been the goal of the tournament. Protasov with the equaliser on 74. Then England won, Soviet Union 3. Aline Knopf scores the opener. Tony Adams equalises. Mikhailichenko scores the goal to put Soviet Union back ahead, and then Pasulko wraps it up 3-1. And then we get a scandal. The Republic of Ireland against the Netherlands. A draw sends Ireland through. The Netherlands need to win to go through, or they're gone out. And Wim Kieft, who was at least a yard and a half offside, scores the winner in the 82nd minute, and Ireland go out. Now, bear in mind, coming into this competition, the favourites were West Germany and the Soviet Union. France, who'd won it in 88, had not qualified. They were the two favourites. So they topped the groups. No surprise to anyone. Soviet Union top with 5 points. Netherlands, as a result to their offside goal, go through in second with 4 points. The Republic of Ireland, robbed of their rightful place in the knockout phases, end up in the semi-finals, as it would be, end up in the third spot and are eliminated. And England go out having lost all 3 games with a goal difference of -5, matching the Danes for the worst team in it. And I would say both teams played, well, to be fair, Spain would have been better than Ireland. So England had the easier group because the West Germans and the Italians would both have been better than the Soviet Union. Sorry, better than the Netherlands, not the Soviet Union. You would have imagined before the tournament. England were the worst team in the tournament. Let's just leave it at that. And move on to the knockout stage, the semi-final. Soviet Union versus Italy, the Netherlands versus West Germany. Everybody expects a West Germany, Soviet Union final. West Germany lose. Lothar Matthäus puts them 1-up from the penalty spot. Ronald Koeman equalises from the penalty spot. And then in the 88th minute, Marco van Basten scores the winner and the Germans are out. And it's a huge shock. The following night, the Soviet Union took care of their side of things. Litovchenko opening the scoring, Protasov getting the second. They beat Italy 2-0. And that sets us up for a final between the Soviet Union and the Netherlands, who nobody expected to get there and wouldn't have got there if not for the offside goal. And the Netherlands beat them 2-0. Ruud Gullit and Marco van Basten get the goals in front of 62,500 people in Munich. It's a genuinely great game of football, well worth your while watching. The Soviets seemed to choke a little bit, allowed the Netherlands the upper hand. But it's a really good game of football that if you get the opportunity to watch, I would recommend going back and watching. Really, really fun. Great tournament. Our top scorers, Marco van Basten gets 5, Protasov and Rudi Völler get 2, Laudrup, Poulsen, Adams, Robson, Altobelli, D'Agostini, Mancini, Vialli, Hullet, Kieft, Koeman, Houghton, Whelan, Alenkov, Litovchenko, Mikhailichenko, Pasulko, Ratz, Butragenio, Gordillo, Michel, Brema, Klinsmann, Matthäus, and Tone get the goals. And our team of the tournament picked in a 4-3-3. Hans van Breukelen in goal. Now, someone needs to explain this to me because I can't understand it. Hans van Breukelen is in goal. No issue there at all. Giuseppe Bergomi, Paolo Maldini, Ronald Koeman, and Frank Rijkaard is the defence. Giuseppe Giannini, Jan Wouters, and Lothar Matthäus is the midfield. Vialli, Hullet, and Van Basten is the attack. How are no Russian or Soviet Union players in the team of the tournament? They get to the final and they're not represented at all. The Italians get to the semi-final stage, lose to said Soviet Union team, and they get 4 players in. The Germans, who you'll remember, topped the group with the Italians in it. Now, they did draw, but still, they topped the group and went out at the same stage. They get 1 player, and the Italians get 4. Now, all of them are incredible players, and they probably all deserve to be in, but how are there no Soviet players in? I'd never be able to understand it. They got to the final, and none of their players got picked. With 34 goals scored in 15 matches for an average of 2.27 goals per game, We had 8 really strong teams. I mean, that Danish team and that English team, they were good teams, and yet they're finishing bottom of groups on 0 points. This was the European Championship done properly. Now, I understand there's more countries in Europe now because of the dissolution of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia and the Czech Republic and Slovakia moving from Czechoslovakia into 2 separate entities and all the rest. You know, that's all fine. There's more countries now, but 8 teams was perfect. 16 is what they should have now. 24 is far too many. And that's it. That's the break. We will be back with the gossip. See you after this. Right, welcome back. So, news. Stephen Reid, the coach, first-team coach at Nottingham Forest, has been given an extended 2-match touchline ban and fined £5,000 after being found guilty of misconduct. Nottingham Forest have also been fined £75,000 for their part in the incident. This was after the temper tantrum that Forest had when they lost to Liverpool via a Darwin Núñez goal. And this is just all a bunch of nonsense, to be honest. But I've read Paul Tierney's report, or what's been released from his report, and Stephen Reid is lucky it's only 2 games. Like, he was way, way out of line. Sam Johnston is set to miss the end of the season and the Euros after having elbow surgery. He was sent to see a specialist after withdrawing from the England squad and now faces surgery. He just won his spot back at Forest. He'd just gotten back in the England squad. That is a huge blow to him, but it's an opportunity for Dean Henderson now to re-establish himself at Palace, rather not Forest, Palace, and to also get back in the England squad and potentially take up a spot for the Euros. So, right. Who will make Gareth Southgate's squad? So this was written by Phil McNulty. So this is who he says he would pick. So he goes with Jordan Pickford, Aaron Ramsdale, and Jack Butland as the goalkeepers. I don't understand Aaron Ramsdale being picked by anybody because he has been woeful when he's played this season, and he doesn't play very often. So don't really get that one. In defence, but I will say, I think he'll go Pickford, Ramsdale, and maybe James Travers, who he called up. I think he might pick him. I think Dean Henderson has a shot if he plays well. If Nick Pope gets back and shows decent form, he might get in. But I think he might go Travers. Defenders, he's gone Walker, Trippier, Stones, Maguire, Konza, Gomez, and Luke Shaw. I think that Southgate will go Walker, Trippier, Stones, Maguire, Guehi, and maybe Lewis Dunk. And I think he'll pick Luke Shaw and Ben Chilwell. I think he'll bring 2 left-backs. In midfield, Phil McNulty's gone Rice, Mainu, Bellingham, Maddison, Trent, and Henderson. I think he'll go Rice, Trent, Bellingham, Gallagher, Henderson, and Maddison. I think he'll bring 6 midfielders. I think those will be the 6. I don't think Kobe Mainu will get in, nor do I think he should get in. Now, he has picked 7 attackers. I think he'll only bring 6. He's picked Saka, Kane, Foden, Tony, Rashford, Bowen, and Gordon. There is no argument to be made right now for bringing Tony or Rashford. They're both having really poor seasons. I would bring Bowen. I don't think he will. I think he'll go Saka, Kane, Foden, Rashford, Palmer, and I think he'll bring Ollie Watkins. And I think he should bring Ollie Watkins. Watkins absolutely deserves his chance. So he says the ones that are definitely in are Pickford, Ramsdale. And how is Ramsdale a definite? Walker, Trippier, Stones, Maguire, Shaw, Trent, Rice, Bellingham, Maddison, Foden, Saka, and Kane. If he thinks Henderson isn't nailed on to go, it's just foolish. And the idea that he's in the work to do is nonsense. Oh, the almost there group, he's put Gomez, Mainu, Gordon, Tony, Rashford, and Butland. I genuinely think Rashford's the only one that's going out of that group. Mark Wehi, it's fitness dependent. I think Lewis Dunk is going. I think Henderson's nailed on to go. Now, Henderson is crap and shouldn't be going. Like, shouldn't be going at all. Rashford doesn't deserve to go at all. I think he'd be much better off bringing Jared Bowen, who's in great form, but it's Southgate, so who knows? Gossip. Manchester City striker Erling Haaland is a transfer target for Barcelona in the summer of 2025. Jesus wept. They have no money. They're not going to have money in 2025 either. Ivan Toney could be an option for Manchester United this summer. The idea of a Tony Højlund front two is interesting. I'm not sure how you make it work with Bruno Fernandes in the team, though. But Garnacho and Rashford could play as wingers, but you don't have the supply. Neither of them are good crossers, so you'd need to buy 2 new wingers, and you'd need to bin off Rashford. Garnacho, you'd probably be all right as a squad player. Arsenal are considering a move for Ousmane Diomande after he stood out during a scouting trip to watch Victor Gyökeres. Please behave yourselves. They can't afford either of them. They can't. Well, maybe they can afford one of them. Can't afford both. United have identified João Gomes as the potential replacement for Casemiro. Totally different player, but, never let that stop you. Gyökeres has moved ahead of Ivan Toney on Arsenal's potential list of new strikers. Manchester United will bring in England's full coaching staff if they appointed Gareth Southgate. United want to speak to Gary O'Neill about a role in the new coaching setup. He would have to be the head coach. He's not taking anything else. Jose Mourinho says he's ready to return to coaching this summer following his departure from Roma. Fair enough. Bayern Munich are willing to offer a world record fee for Ronald Araujo. I have a feeling Kim Min-jae is leaving this summer. I don't think he's settled all that well. Luis Diaz says hope has not been lost about his son playing in Spain. I'd happily sell him this summer if the right offer comes in. Liverpool and Bayern Munich are keen on Roberto De Zerbi as an alternative to Xabi Alonso. Yeah, fair. I think they're also both keen on Ruben Amorim. Wolves are leading the race to sign Che Adams when he becomes a free agent this summer. Makes sense. They tried to sign him before. I just don't think he's good enough to play above kind of 15th in the Premier League. Ajax are exploring a deal for Aston Villa's Tim Orugbunam. Don't think Villa will sell, especially not with Boubacar Kamara injured. I think he's going to establish himself as an important squad player for them. Could be wrong. Sturm Graz want to sign Arsenal's 21-year-old Danish striker Mika Berit on a permanent deal following a successful loan. Arsenal are open to selling Nuno Tavares this summer, with Lazio interested. Okay. Chelsea will listen to offers for Conor Gallagher, Trevoh Chalobah and Armando Brogia this summer as they attempt to avoid breaching the Premier League's financial regulations. Brighton are tracking 24-year-old Nigerian striker Philippe Otele, who plays for Cluj in Romania. And finally, Real Madrid sent scouts to watch River Plate's 16-year-old Argentina midfielder Franco Mastantuono, I think that's the right pronunciation, who's by all accounts a potential star in the making, but again, he's 16, so we'll wait and see. But Real do love to nab a South American player very early. And that's it, folks. That's me for today. I will see you all tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.